the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AVWeek, episode 98, recorded Wednesday, July 3rd, 2013. I thought it was a blender.
Ready.
AVWeek.
Performing. Scan.
Week.
Online.
This is AVWeek. AVWeek. This is AVWeek, your weekly wrap-up of audiovisual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I'm your host. This is episode 98, which just means that we've done this 97 more times. With us this week, a returning brother from far off in the West Coast, Mr. Rich Fregosa, FregosaDesign.com. How are you, sir?
I'm doing very good. Hopefully bringing back some West Coast vibes to the show.
Yay.
So I guess, is this the penultimate to the penultimate show, leading up to episode 100?
Yes.
So.
I have nothing for that one except for guests. Actually, no. That one, I joke. I try to get this show booked about 2 weeks out, so that one is booked, and it'll be the board of directors, the board of advisors. So that'll be Mr. Tucker and Ms. A.B. Dawn and Mr. Scott and Mr. Drainer, if he can pull himself away from the real job. So he's a busy guy. Sennheiser works him to death too much. So They do. Also with us is a first-timer. Not that we haven't had somebody on from Pershing before, but Emily is new. Her name is Emily Hay, Vice President of Systems Engineering Services. How are you, ma'am?
Good afternoon. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. This week we're going to talk a little bit about huddle spaces, simply because I was tired of hearing the stupid phrase at Infocom this year. Everybody, and I do mean everybody. I think the only people that didn't have a huddle space was Daylight, but that's and also talk about the.
They do. It's called a mirror.
Oh, shush! No, was it? No, it was Daylight that had the camera in the. I guess they do have a huddle space because they have a camera in one of their drop down screens. So never mind. They do have a huddle space.
Yeah, in the snazzy new. They're rebranded.
Yes.
Yeah. At least they didn't change their name. I was expecting that.
Well, no, that's that would be. Who was it? The power people. I can't even think.
Oh, what are you talking about?
Yeah, their branding is so great. I've already forgotten them. Actually, I gave them a hard time. They came on the show. Zantec and them. They came on the show, and I said, you guys have had kind of a marketing issue. They said, yeah, we have. Anyhow. But yeah, we're going to give some advice to people presenting at Infocom from our buddy John Huntington, who wrote a very interesting piece. And John's is an interesting guy, so you have to take it with a grain of salt, as it were. But first, we don't get much breaking news in the world of audio and visual, but we have some. Came down about 3 hours ago, according to TechCrunch's website. Streaming entertainment startup Boxy. I don't know if you'd call them a startup anymore. They've been around for a few years, but that's what TechCrunch is calling them, so we'll go with it. Is acquired by, you ready for this? Samsung. Now, holy cow! If you don't know what Boxy is it's a streaming media device. It is it's the same as not the same, but kind of like a Hop Hog box. It actually started out being just software, kind of like Myth TV. And you bought your own PC and you made your own Boxy box, and now they've got some hardware that they'll do as well. But it's an awful lot like an Apple TV, so it's a good thing we have my favorite Apple fanboy, Mr. Fregosa. Is this
reporting?
I'm not even going to say a shot across the bow. This is like aimed straight at the deck. Of Apple. Samsung just keeps firing at them.
Well, I think it's interesting. I think that I was at CES this year, and Samsung was really pushing their smart apps for the 2013 line of TVs, and I think it was a natural progression. That they're pushing so far into it that it becomes, just layering it right in. As soon as I saw it, I went, yeah, this is them saying we are now going to focus on whatever we didn't have. We are now going to layer it in with these devices. And when I read the press release, it sounded more like they were buying the company, the mind share that comes along with everything in the product, because it's always been primarily a hobbyist type of piece, kind of for the do-it-yourselfer, who didn't want to be constrained inside the Apple ecosystem, and they wanted to be able to play their own home, big air quotes, videos that they have ripped to their playback devices in order to play it back on their TVs, and to be able to access their home media content. And then along the way, they developed and branched out, and they got agreements with Netflix and Hulu, and like Roku and Apple TV and everybody else. Yeah. And Samsung's absolutely going after Apple on this one. They're saying, "Yep, we now have our own streaming box if you want to do the streaming box, but more importantly, we're going to go ahead and layer and fold this all into our smart TV apps." And I think that's where we're really, if they decide to do well with this, that's what they'll wind up doing with the unit and the technology, at least hopefully.
Did the price surprise you at $30 million? That seems a bit low to me. I mean, I honestly think that they got them for steal, but that may just be my impression of Boxy.
Up until their deal with what was it, Netgear? I think, who makes their outboard box. I could be wrong. It's either Netgear or Linksys. D-Link. Sorry, it's D-Link who makes their outboard box. They've always been software centric. I mean, there were instances where you could, if you wanted to, and if you were really industrious, you could find ways to get Boxy onto an Apple TV to play with it, for development purposes. And I don't know necessarily what they're buying in terms of their revenue at that point. And Boxy, other than the hobbyist market and the do-it-yourself type, even though they were selling in major retail locations, I don't know if their sales for that device ever really took off at that point. I don't know if they even sold more than the Google TVs that were out there.
So this really was a software purchase for Samsung to kind of meld that in.
And again, I think they were more focused on the technology than the hardware and the assets itself, because really the D-Link thing was a licensing agreement. It wasn't, this is a Boxy branded box. It was, this is a Boxy box by D-Link.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if they're necessarily, obviously they're not acquiring those assets or anything, but it'll be interesting down the line. And so either one or two things will happen. It's kind of like what happened with Logitech and buying a couple of companies. They'll either do great with it, or a year from now, it'll mysteriously vanish off the face of the earth. Cisco did the same thing a couple of times, So it's a double-edged sword sometimes when you're acquired by a big company. And, in light of, what is it, Control 4, I think, was going for, a $60 million IPO they're talking about, and at $30 million for buying the entire company. They only had 45 employees. So what exactly were they buying at that point? So maybe for them it's a great deal. I hope the guys who own it, did well. I'm hoping that they walk out with a good chunk of it.
Yeah, I do too. Emily, is like Rich said? The Samsung is pointing their guns directly at Apple with this?
Yeah, I definitely think so, and I it'll be interesting to see how it rolls out if they end up just buying the intellectual property and rebrand Boxy, and Boxy kind of disappears and it's rolled into the smart TV. But I do think it was a deal at $30 million, depending on what they do with it. I definitely think that Boxy struggled against, the Apple TV and Roku. So I think it was a smart move. Hopefully it was a smart move on both parts.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. That's one thing that Samsung has going for them, is the fact that, well, they have a TV and Apple still doesn't. So
right. It become the all-in-one solution that's, become so popular out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And they could, they roll that into, the integrate the restaurant app that they have now, and hey, cool.
Mm-hmm. So, well, and it could be that they're just buying the streaming services that Boxy was doing.
Yeah, that's true too.
Right. Because that's one thing that Apple TV we don't have yet with, the DVR purposes with it.
Well, and the other thing and you compare all of these different cord cutting devices, right? With none of them has like the ultimate everything, right? I mean, Roku, you've got, oh my goodness, a boatload of channels. but unless you're industrious, there's not a real easy way to connect your home, either NAS or some other file sharing media. Apple TV has a limited number of channels, but you can, as long as you stay in the Apple ecosystem, you got everything you've ever purchased from there. And that's the one thing about Boxee that I was kind of interested in, similar to the Myth TV, which if you're not familiar with that is also just software based, and that is another DIY, do-it-yourselfer. It was a little easier to bring in the external files from a network storage device. So it'd be interesting if they keep that. Let's stay in the world of displays, because Qualcomm is dumping $120 million. I shouldn't say dumping. They're investing $120 million in Sharp. Here's the other thing that makes this interesting is a couple months ago, Samsung actually became one of the biggest, actually the biggest non-bank institute investor. And so now Qualcomm is the third largest investor in Sharp. Emily, I'm going to ask you this, and what is it that these guys see, or is it the fact that they need Sharp to succeed, otherwise they're in trouble? What is it that they see in Sharp that both Samsung and Qualcomm and other investors are willing to put up this kind of money?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what they're investing in Sharp, because they need Sharp, not only just from a name brand recognition, but also to further their display technology that they've developed, the MEM display products. So I think that they're investing in probably, riding the sales of Sharp is how I view it, and saying, well, we're going to become your largest investor and use the market share that Sharp has in order to further their own display technology.
Rich, is this, like Emily said, and I kind of alluded to, is this where they need Sharp, not only from the technology standpoint, because they're the ones primarily who are making the glass and making the TVs anymore, but also need them to further the technology that these guys have developed?
For a couple of reasons. One is going to be mobile. I mean, this is a move for mobile. I think that the first thing when we look at this and we look at displays, we keep thinking of large format displays, anything from 22 inches on up. I see it completely different. I see this being a push into the fact that mobile is continuing to explode. It's not going to go, and there's going to be that mid-range size where they can sell a whole ton of them at this point. And also keep in mind that, Samsung and Apple are having a falling out. Well, Apple has to go to somebody to still keep getting displays. If Samsung owns a continuing portion of Sharp and potentially any of those contracts, they still get to thumb their nose at Apple.
Yeah, that would be very interesting, especially, if they can say, you know what, let's increase the price just a little bit more. All right, one more quick purchase / business story. Allen Heath was recently acquired by a firm called Electra Partners, and what's interesting about this is not the fact that they were purchased. It was, it's 43 million pounds, and I'm a big dumb American, and I have no idea how much that is, but I'm assuming it's somewhere in the neighborhood of, probably $100 million by now, because of their, exchange rates and the fact that the dollar is low. But I should probably Google
how many
that.
quids is that?
Oh, fine. Or shillings. How many shillings?
Right.
I recently finished David Copperfield, and now all these half pennies are in my head. But Electra is, as much as that sounds technology, it's not.
Not at all.
No, they've got like insurance companies, food casings. I'm just going
animal
down.
Identification. I saw.
Yeah.
It's just strange.
Credit cards, bicycles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You go to their website, and Allen Heath is just kind of sandwiched in between all these, fine arts materials and park operators and property management, and then there's Allen Heath.
Cheese manufacturing.
Mm-hmm.
That was fun.
You got to wonder whose brother-in-law this is.
Oh,
right.
Come on. Really? You think maybe? No. Anyhow, so the question is really how big of a deal will this be when it comes to the daily nuts and bolts of running Allen Heath, because I have a lot of respect for Allen Heath. I have a lot of respect for their mixers, so much so that I'm using one right now. That's what we use to record the show with. Emily, is it how big of an impact will that have on a daily basis when a company like Electra, which is really, it's an investment firm,
right? I think, from just reading the article and reading the quotes that they even talked about, they're looking forward to working together. I really think it's just a financial investment. I mean, I don't think it doesn't seem like it will change the day-to-day operations of Allen and Heath or direct their, future product. It seems like it's really just a financial acquisition to me, but that's just by reading their, we can't wait to work with each other quotes in the article and then going to look at Electra's website and seeing that they have nothing to do with, professional audio systems. So.
Nothing like they make chips or anything. Or,
yeah, right.
Headphones or something.
Not even technology related.
Yeah.
So.
Rich, is this going to be, not much ado about nothing? It kind of like, I don't really even have a good analogy for this. A couple years ago, Behringer bought Midas, and everybody and their brother, threw their hands up and said, "Oh my goodness, the sky is falling, the world's coming to an end." But this isn't even that. It's just these guys who want to make money and saw a good opportunity, I guess.
Yeah, Allen and Heath was part of D&M already. They were part of that portfolio to begin with, and nobody really freaked out over it when that happened. Mm-hmm. And it's very possible that somebody from D&M went over to Electra and went, "Hey, you want to buy a mixing company?" And they're like, "Oh, how much?" It's like, it's kind of
they first
what
had
it
to
felt
explain
like
what a
to
mixing
me.
company was.
Yeah, because maybe they thought mixers, actual
right.
hand mixers.
Yeah, it was the biggest mistake in their investment history. Exactly. We thought we bought a blender.
Oh, jeez.
You told me this made margaritas.
Oh my gosh. Oh my.
In other news, right? Exactly. The Allen and Heath Margarita Master comes out next. Mm-hmm. We were talking about it earlier, is that this is what we really feel the industry is going to, is that they're all starting to consolidate. They're the mom and pop manufacturers slowly fading away, and they're now being held by holding companies or companies who are professional business managers, for lack of a better term, and they're just treating it as either it's a commodity, either it makes money or it doesn't make money. And as the market moves towards that, I think the manufacturers and the investment strategies are doing it. And I think that established manufacturers are also looking to get in while the getting's good at the same time.
Well, you mentioned it earlier, the fact that the Control4 is going for an IPO. Then they're hoping to raise $60 million, was it?
Yeah.
That to me seems, I'm not a business guy by any stretch of the imagination. But you look at the market and you go, okay, they're going for an IPO, and then you've got guys like George Feldstein at Crestron, who has said, he doesn't, his strategy for when he retires is that everybody will just keep doing what they're doing. And then you've got guys like AMX, which is a part of an actual corporation, and so you have all these different, strategies, I guess, all these different makeups. And there's not really a correct or incorrect answer. It seems that it just kind of works depending on the culture of the company. It just kind of works for everybody. So.
Yeah, look at Core Brands, who's snapping everybody up every time you turn around.
Yeah.
And it's I think in the commercial world, just because it's been around longer in the sense of it being an established market, it's less of a surprise, but we're seeing that Resi is starting to do the same thing now, where there's consolidation, and really the companies, although they're branded differently, are really all going into the same pod. With these guys, it's exactly. AMX, when they switched, everyone's wondering what was going to happen with them. They honestly really didn't skip a beat, and I think it depends on the company who purchases them, whether they're going to get in and decide that they're going to manage it, or they're hands off, and they basically, it's just another asset that they manage, and they basically tell the guys, hey, just don't screw this up. That's what it sounds like this purchase might be. Here you go. Yeah, we bought you from these other guys. It's July, so it's like the baseball trading season. So maybe these guys got caught up in the same excitement, with a manufacturer to be named later.
Yeah, I think it's a big tell. If the manufacturer is already doing well and, operating well, such as Allen and Heath, I have a lot of respect for them as well. And they're bought and then continue that model versus being bought and either rebranded or change the management structure that it hurts the company. I mean, I think we've seen successful acquisitions and we've seen non-successful acquisitions. So I'm hoping that this will be a successful one for Allen and Heath. Given that they have such a respect in the industry, and it will just be a financial, acquisition.
Yeah, I hope so too, because that's, like I said, I that's what we use here, so it's a good brand. So. We have a couple more. I'm not going to call them leftover stories from Infocom, but they're interesting, and it bears mentioning. The first one is from our buddy John Huntington at controlgeek.net, and I'm just going to kind of get your guys' take. Rich, I know you did not go to Infocom. Emily, did you happen to make it to Orlando this year?
Yeah, I was there this year.
Okay, so we'll kick it off with Rich, because since he wasn't there, he is going to CEDIA, and he'll have a CEDIA code for you at the end, because he's in another CEDIA tweet. But John writes, basically, here is, if you're an exhibitor, this is how John would like you to treat him, and it's a nice list. Some of them is the fact that there are certain types of people that I don't want to see, according to John. The used car salesman, the scanner, the booth females, as it were, the revolutionaries. Everything's a game changer, as a couple of different bloggers wrote going into Infocom. So, Rich, what's one or two things that you want to see or you don't want to see when it comes to either Infocom or CEDIA or whatever other show you go to? NAB?
Kegerators.
Who is it?
Kegerators. It's like, yeah, I apply the no beer, no show rule. The trade show it's one. I think for manufacturers and for attendees, it's a double-edged sword. It's we go out. Manufacturers know that they feel that they have to do it in order to be able to reach out to their existing dealers and hopefully attract new ones. And it's changed, I guess, in prior generations. It felt like we attended trade shows to actually book business. You'd go in, you'd meet. And you were basically looking to book whatever your existing business was or new business coming in, and it was a working show. And somewhere along the line, it feels like it's moved on from that now to, yeah, here we go again. We have to show up. Yeah, we're supposed to show new products. So here's what we pushed through. And by the way, yeah, coming soon. I think it was Don mentioned it a couple of shows ago. I think on the special. Was, what would be great, and I would really love for trade shows, is if there was a only show products that you're planning on shipping soon.
Yeah.
If you have a back room, and you want to give dealers or your trusted partners a sneak peek, and say, here's some of the things that we're working on, great. But make it more of a functional show. Here's what we have, here's what we do, here's how we can help you now and your products. And then take that separate tack, which is and down the line, which is behind the velvet rope if you want to do it. But I think that's the hardest part sometimes, is gauging what to get excited about and what to know is going to be vaporware without having to worry about it being vaporware and I painted myself in a corner.
Yeah, by designing based off of it.
Right. Yeah, and it's rough for them. I mean, you got to remember that. The manufacturers, how much of their staff that they bring out, I mean, that takes a lot out of their process. I think sometimes they're just as unhappy to see us as we're unhappy to see them. Sometimes.
They love us.
I mean, it's like we've got a captive audience and we've got X number of vendors that we have to go to. Let's say there's 300, 400 vendors. And what was Infocom this year? It was kissing 35,000.
No, it went over 35,000. It
was over 35,000.
The biggest one ever.
Yeah. Now, imagine that over the course of the 3-day period on the show floor, your manufacturer, even on the low point, is seeing at least 1,000, maybe, or to a couple of thousand people each day.
It's a lot of people to have to get through, and you have to kind of go through the process because you can only do so much personal talking. The math just doesn't work. You know, if you're a small booth and you got 3,000 people coming in, it's a much different if you're a 3-person booth as opposed to a 300-person booth. And so, you know, it's just the numbers at that point where they do have to, you know, take the card. Here's what we do. Here's the canned presentation of the dog and pony. Because sometimes when they're talking to you, they're planning on it being overheard by about 15 people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a balance too between, I mean, you have to assume there's the 20-year veterans that have been to trade shows year in and year out and are so used to the dog and pony. And then there's the new visitors who that may be their first time at Infocom or, you know, CES or whatever trade show it is. So I think some of the dog and pony is meant for the new users to just kind of grab their attention. And, you know, I know at least following the Twitter from Infocom this year, any booth that had any kind of game associated with it or you know, got a lot of attention. So it certainly is good for PR in that sense, regardless of, you know, if it actually makes people buy their product or not. I can't attest to that. But I think, especially since there's a lot of international travelers that come to these trade shows too, that it may be their first time, that's kind of the audience that they're aiming for.
Well, and it goes down to metrics too. I mean, we measure everything. And for a manufacturer to decide on their budget, how big or how little they go and how much staff they put into it and everything else, those metrics have to come in to some form of number. Mm-hmm. And, you know, so that is a qualitative or quantitative part of the process. And what John's talking about is the qualitative part, which is I want to be treated like, you know, a valued industry partner. If somebody's new, you know, I want them to be able to get to the point and do it. Well, you got to be careful because at the same point, you never know who you're going to alienate or who you're going to bring in. And so that comes down to personalities too. And John is not one to withhold any opinion.
No, no, he's not.
On this. And so, I mean, I get it as somebody who's been going to trade shows for, you know, span of over 2 decades. Yeah. You know, I mean, you kind of get a feel and you'd like to be treated as, you know, like I said, what did he call one? The old friend or the new friend, yeah. Right? You know, mm-hmm. You want that personal attention and you want to feel valued for taking your time to be out there. And that's fine, but you're also still dealing with people. And people have different personality traits, people have different personality styles, and they may have a good day or a bad day. I mean, everybody, by the 3rd day of the show, you're beat, you know? Yeah. So, yeah, sometimes it is easier to default into X, Y, or Z. And so, I mean, I think the manufacturers, for the most part, do the best they can, and it is an investment, and it is an effort for them to be at these trade shows, and for us, you know, as clients, you know, or partners, you know, we've got a little bit easier because we're putting them all in the fish barrel, and we get to go around and see all of them. They're basically having to hang out their sign and say, please, you know, amidst everybody else who does, you know, 7 other people who do what I do, please come look at me. Right. And so you know, without meaning to, it's almost an adversarial situation in the first place because they're the ones that are. It's one of the only times where they get to be held hostage.
Yeah,
right.
Tension. Where normally it's the other way around, and so you know, I mean, it made sense, and it's tough. I think that, you know, although I've never been on the manufacturer side, I have so many friends in the manufacturing side that I definitely have some sympathy for them for what they have to go through. So I think I tend to cut them a little bit more slack than what this little piece was about.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I talked with a couple my buddy Michael, who now works for Sennheiser. It was interesting seeing Infocom through his eyes this year. This was his first year working for a manufacturer. Last year he worked for an integrator, and it was just neat to see that side of it. Not that I've talked with other guys that I know before, but Michael and I know each other on a different level, and just seeing it from his side was very interesting. They put up with a lot. Just put it that way. So
yeah.
Emily, is there 1 or 2 things that maybe you wish that exhibitors would do or absolutely would not do?
Well, I did agree with a couple of things of the would not do. I mean, when you walk into a booth and they just ask you to scan your badge, you know that they're obviously not there to have a meaningful conversation with you. You're just a number in that regard. You know, I do agree with Rich as far as the new products. I mean, it's so often that even this year at Infocom, I saw products that were introduced last year or even 2 years ago that are still not shipping. So, you know, I understand the first to market kind of race that's out there. where people want to introduce new products at InfoComm. But if you have no plans on shipping that product for at least 24 months, don't even tell me about it. You can tell me about it, but don't show me a cardboard box, and say we don't have a ship date for it yet. So I do agree with that sentiment. So I think I agree with Rich's, the manufacturers do the best they can. There's no way to please everyone. Everyone has a different personality and a different reason for being at the trade show. So I think they do the best that they can and try to, reach a broader audience that way.
No, they definitely do. And that's, I think some of it also is the fact that, let's take a couple of companies that I use an awful lot of. Let's put it that way. They're not trying to get me. They've already got me for the most part. I'm going to go by their booth. I'm going to have a meeting with them anyhow, something we're all set up, and just to kind of see their new products. They're trying to get the person who they don't have yet, and so that's kind of the whole thing. I mean, one thing that was interesting about InfoComm, and I actually wrote this in one of my blog posts about it. This year, it was an awful lot of getting business done, and I heard that from more than one manufacturer who said, they were finishing deals, finalizing deals, completing deals on the show floor that were rather, really, really significant deals. I mean, more than, there was a couple of deals with national chained restaurants and food companies that when they told me, I was like, holy cow, that's really cool. They were actually doing business on the show floor. And that's something I hadn't heard in years past, at least not for the last 2 or 3 years, just because of the way the economy was. And that in and of itself made me very positive. This was even before I heard the number about this year's show. So,
yeah, I think that's a good point, because I think, with everyone so focused on travel expenses and stuff nowadays, I think a lot of people did plan to have business meetings in Orlando when everyone's there for 3 days. You have a captive audience, so it's the perfect time to get business done.
Yeah.
And to your earlier point too, I have a lot of manufacturers that I talk to regularly that I don't even see at InfoComm. I may stop by and say hello, but they said, all right, I'll give you a call after InfoComm.
Yeah.
We all know what's going to happen, and I'll tell you about the new products that we release, but there's no reason for us to meet when, they can go out and reach new audiences. They already know they have me. So, so that's definitely something that we do as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's going to be all robot trade shows.
You know what? If the guy from Beam has his way, it will be.
All standing in the lunch line.
This guy.
Holograms. I want holograms.
Oh, man. This guy's, this, holy cow, talk about smart. He's actually a neighbor of yours, Rich. He's there in Silicon Valley. And this guy's like out of the world smart. And somebody made the comment to him, said, Beam is Suitable Technologies. And they've got I call it a personal video conferencing system. And what it is, I don't know if you saw this or not, Emily. It's a pair of wheels and then a stem, and then on top is a monitor. And then you control this thing remotely, and you can drive around with it, and you can do Wi-Fi, or also can work off of a 4G card. And it's wicked cool. It's very intuitive to run. And they had a booth at InfoComm, and somebody made the comment to him, said, you know what, you should do, you should bring 10 or 50 of these, 50 of these next year at in Vegas. And he starts doing the math. He's like, 50, we could bring 1,000. And he's like, we could do this. And this guy is, like I said, wicked smart, and a really cool guy. So, one last InfoComm story. Everybody had a huddle room. If I heard the word huddle one more time, I was going to scream. Barco, AMX, Christie, Crestron, they all had some sort of meeting room solution. And I don't know. I put on the show notes to you guys asking the question, was this, first of all, it's like everybody shared the same memo between themselves. Barco has had their ClickShare for a while, but there was some other stuff going on. I don't know if this is a product looking for a solution, or if this was an actual problem that these guys all happened to come up with a solution in the same year. Emily, we'll start with you on this. Is this, was this an actual problem that I'm just not aware of because I live in education, and, we have collaborative spaces, but nothing to this scale?
I don't know if I define it as a problem, but I do think there was an opportunity. because I think this whole BYOD, bring your own device, kind of marketing spiel that's been going around, I think is definitely taken over, and be able to display Windows PC, Apple PC, Android, whatever the device may be, I think, is definitely what this is aiming to solve. I think, like we talked about earlier, there's not one solution that has everything. I saw Barco's ClickShare last year, and they reintroduced it this year with new Android and Apple devices. And the Crestron Air Media device, was kind of following along the same lines of wireless presentation. You can connect 32 devices. I really liked the Enzo product, actually, the AMX. I like the idea of the QR code scheduling. I thought that was a pretty intuitive device. They use Dropbox basically as a file sharing server, and then you use a QR code when you walk into a room in order to authenticate. So I did like that, and obviously we work in the government world, so having a secure dual authentication device was pretty impressive
That's
to me.
helpful,
So,
yes.
yeah. So I don't necessarily think it's a problem, but I do think that it's where the industry is going. Is that no matter what device you want to bring into a conference room and be able to connect it easily, I think if it's that difficult to do, then we're not designing our systems or installing our systems correctly. So maybe that's the problem that it's aiming to solve, is that if it's so hard to walk into a room and connect a laptop using a cable, then there's something greater wrong.
Well, yes, I can see that. What's interesting though is that a lot of times those complicated systems uses those same people.
Yeah, true, exactly.
Sorry, Rich, is this? I'll ask the question the same way. Was this a problem? Was this or like Emily said, probably better than it was more of an opportunity?
It's an opportunity for I think what this technology that we're seeing is a stopgap technology, and I think we talked about it offline a little bit. I'm a huge proponent, obviously being in the Silicon Valley, over the fact that software is eating the world, and it's been quoted by some very, very smart people, and we're seeing that these are hardware manufacturers who are coming out with kind of hybrid solutions in between, focusing on the BYOD, the bring your own device market, which is huge. And it's not even BYOD. Let's call it for what it is. It's mobile. Everybody's moving to mobile. And by this move to mobile and with these established manufacturers, I kind of view it as them trying to establish a beachhead before some software-based or IT-based company or somebody out of our industry comes in and eats their lunch. That's what I really see here, is that they're saying we need to come up with some solutions for people to still stick with us before somebody looks at our market and goes, a couple of codecs and some algorithms, we could do this pretty easy. And when we were dealing in an analog world, what Emily was just talking about, coming up and plugging a laptop in and it should be simple. It should be. And now that we're getting to this point that the technology is catching up, 15, 20 years ago when we were still in an analog world, we had a whole lot of issues to go with. Then when we moved over to digital, we were still dealing with legacy systems and how do you bring, new technology into legacy backbones and how do you upgrade and, your budgets. And again, you're dealing with budgets at this point. They're looking at it saying, okay, how can we leverage the money that's left over for our budget? Because nobody is necessarily going to say, well, we're going to go ahead and allow for that $45,000 switcher in here anymore, that does VGA and HDMI and all of these other things. We want for, in a $15,000 touch panel. They're coming in and saying, hey, look, we got 4 people who've got iPads, one's got an Android device. Our net investment in all of that they have that our company provided is maybe $2,000. And we want them to be able to get in and quickly collaborate. And so that's where these products are coming from. I'm looking at it. It's an answer to the commoditization that's going on around them and still trying to keep everybody in the fold before, like I said, somebody else comes in with a really smart software solution, because that will come. Somebody is going to come with this. They're going to look at this market and say, there are easier ways to do this. And at that point, then hopefully these manufacturers are going to say, look, we're still in here, we're still vested enough, we're still relevant that we can maintain our core audience. And so I think they all kind of got it. I think they all did share the same memo. I think they're all reading the technology news and going, we got to do something about this now.
Okay, so let me ask you this question, and I'm not being silly here. I was talking to, I think it was at Clear One a couple of years ago, and the guy that and I apologize, I don't remember the gentleman's name, but the person at the booth, he and I were talking, and we were talking about just where he sees technology going. He made the comment to me that it's still stuck in my head, where he sees where the future's going, where all of this is going to be. The best way I have to put this is a software-based switcher. So you have transmitters and you have receivers, and it's all kind of managed on the network, kind of, a la AVB-ish, HDBaseT-ish. But these big honkin' switchers that you were putting in 20 years ago, Rich, that infrastructure is now in the network. And there aren't any, 3-rack unit high switchers. It's all done by network. How far away are we from that?
Look how fast cloud storage came on.
Yeah.
People, there were, remember the old server farms and, storage solutions and having to maintain internally, your own network storage and hardware solutions from constantly, I've kind of gone on and on about how I feel that I truly feel that our industry is about 20 years behind the rest of the tech sector. A lot of what we're seeing now, one of the analogies that I always use is that, you remember Sun Microsystems and Silicon Graphics and Cray Microcomputer, and, they were huge hardware investments to perform specific tasks and you place the premium on it, and then they were replaced by a software world. Mm-hmm. That's only taken 15 years. And with technology, that we're moving at such a pace in the rest of the tech sector, which, admittedly, the companies are focusing on it because they have a larger audience that they can sell to. The reason why our industry is behind is because we're a smaller market. We just are. We're a decimal point correction in terms of the greater tech industry. Mm-hmm. So the manufacturers that are looking at this are saying, okay, there's some trickle-down theory that occurs from it, and what you're saying is exactly, where can I see it? I would say that within the next, at the outside, 36 months, there's going to be a significant product that will allow for it. And it may be even faster. Because again, if somebody takes a look at the market and sees that there's some penetration that they can do from a code standpoint, as opposed to having to retool and manufacture and tool up, that speeds things up. And that's what does speed everything up, is you're not dealing with physical product at that point. You're not having to tool up your factory and put everything through. If you can use kind of the same base silicon that everybody else is using, and then you're coming in and you're working on tinkering under the hood. So for me, I would say I would not be surprised if within 36 months, if not sooner, that it gets a very big jump into that, just because of the way that mobile's moving. Yeah. That's it, is the market is forcing it. It's not that the manufacturers are having these moments of clarity. They're desperately trying to catch up to where the rest of the greater industry is going. And take a look at the enterprise. The enterprise is moving to mobile. They are doing it begrudgingly, but they know they have to. And they're coming up with solutions that are software-based solutions in order to be able to scale. And I think once somebody figures out how to scale properly, then you're just going to see this huge growth curve spike come through. And I think these manufacturers are hoping that they can still be in on it.
Yeah, I would think one of the reasons why I would agree with you that we are kind of 20 years behind is that the AV industry is a very proprietary industry. I mean, the standards exist in the IT world, for a reason, so that for interoperability. And I think in the AV industry, we've been such a proprietary world for so long. It's a really tough pill to swallow for a lot of these manufacturers. I mean, you mentioned AVB, HDBaseT. These AVB was ratified 2 years ago, and it still can't be deployed today because Cisco hasn't accepted AVB really as a deployable standard at the routing level. Just not the layer 2, layer 3 level. So I think if we can have the AV industry embrace this, standards-based, non-proprietary world, there's no reason why we couldn't be there today. I think that's really what the holdup is. I I hope 36 months out we're there. I kind of guess I view it as a glass half empty, as opposed to glass half full approach. I feel like there's no reason why we shouldn't be there today, but I feel like we're kind of holding ourselves back by trying to maintain this proprietary stream along with accepting the standards that are out there.
No, that's go ahead.
Let's also consider the elephant in the room in that if you have engineers, software engineers, who are coming fresh out of school, and they go to a job fair and their choice is to work for Google, Amazon, Apple, or XYZ AV company, who do you think that is going to draw the top tier talent in the first place? So I think part of it too that we don't necessarily talk about is, are these manufacturers able to draw the talent in to be able to get from point A to point B? Because again, if you think about it, they've all been hardware-based company. That's what they know. That's where they came from. And, that's the question that I always have is how much are they investing in their software brain trust in the first place for it? Do these companies, how many engineers do they have on this product? Do they have 1? Do they have 10? Do they have 3? Do they have 40? And that's the one thing that we sometimes forget is that you still need people on the back end. Although it's a great product, it has to start with an idea. And somebody has to be able to materialize that idea from a technical standpoint. And so, that's why I was saying is that it potentially may be an outside market that forces our hand because they will likely have the engineering firepower to be able to put on this. A small team from a large player is probably larger than potentially the software teams of most of these companies combined.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And it may come from an acquisition, similar to what we were talking about earlier is, it may have to be an acquisition because the hardware manufacturers just don't have the talent in order to think that way. So they need to acquire a company that's already doing it successfully.
Or they get acquired by a company that's already doing it successfully.
Well, true. Yeah. The flip side too.
Not pointing any fingers, but starts with C and ends with Esco.
Right.
I still think they're going to buy a control company. That's just somewhere. Yeah. I said Control 4 for the longest time, but now that they're doing an IPO, that I'm probably wrong on that one. But somebody, I swear, they're going to buy somebody. All right, guys. One last story before I let you get out of here. Since it's 4th of July, we're going to talk about swimming pools. This is just an interesting story to me. And just because I know Mr. Pagoza, he's probably done, a dozen of these. It comes to us from an electronic house. Automation ideas for your swimming pool. So, Rich, how many of these have you probably did at least 3 or 4 of these that are actually in this article? One was in Boca Raton, Florida.
I cannot lay claim to any of these actual ones that are being photographed.
Okay. But you've done something like it.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely 10 years ago, there just weren't any manufacturers. There was only one manufacturer who actually spoke outside of their own system, and we were actually hired to write the interface for it, and then we handed it out to everybody when they were done. I mean, it's a natural progression. With the when it first started out, it was like a really cool, tweaky thing. Hey, look, I can turn on my hot tub, and it's gotten to the point now. Which again, going back to mobile, it has gotten to be a very practical use with some of these options to be able to monitor something very simply with an add-on device to the pool controllers. Every pool manufacturer now has some form of interface device, whether it's a third-party interface box or it's built in right to the unit that you can go ahead and just go to a little app on your phone or on your tablet to be able to perform some of the rudimentary control. So it's cool. I'm excited about it because it's something that is entering people's minds now as they can do it simply, they can do it affordably, and it becomes just another Trojan horse, kind of a gateway into expanding out the rest of the system. We had an example I literally just did one when I was in the Hamptons, where we just thought it was the coolest thing. A client showed us and said, hey, look, I can turn my misters on and off from here. I said, hey, got an idea for you. What if you didn't have to go to 3 different apps to do this and we just put a button on there for you? And went, you can do that? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. value added within something that was already there. And, from the entertainment side, where I live, it's not hot enough that I need a pool. But for people who have it, it's expensive enough to maintain a pool. So anything that you can do that will help you either control it or automate it or get you some form of savings, even just from a monitoring standpoint, it's awesome. And there's some cool stuff. I mean, I've done some with water slides and grottos and, the little spitting fountains, kind of like the Bellagio.
Oh,
they're cool. It's absolutely cool. But there was a premium that you paid for it, because basically everybody was rolling their own and making very specific interfaces for it. Now you can literally pick up, an attachment to your existing pool system without having to change everything out. Throw it on a little, 99-cent iPad app, and from wherever you are, be able to turn on your spa or change the temperature and have a go at it. So I'm excited because, again, it's stopped being something from Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. We don't need, what's his name, Robin Leach?
Yes.
Introducing your automated pool anymore. It's literally now just go to the App Store or the Google Play Store, and there it is, and you too can have this. And I like that it's becoming something for the general, as opposed to somebody who's lighting cigars with $100 bills.
Yeah. And that part of this is also kind of the way that the industry has developed on both sides, from the pool side as well as from the control side, where both of them are kind of talking in IP based language, because you've got an app, you're able to talk over IP. Both of them can talk now, and so now they can talk to each other.
I will say, dive-in theaters are the coolest thing ever.
Jeez.
I've done one in my career, and it was smoking cool.
You are just a rock star, dude. All right. Emily, you deal with government, so they probably, well, I shouldn't say they probably don't. They probably do have these, and they, we all paid for them.
Right. It's just not controlled from your iPad, unfortunately.
It's not secure enough.
Yes, exactly.
It's a wired connection. So, all right, guys, that's going to wrap us up for this week, this 4th of July special. By the way, thank you so much to the men and women who serve this country and give of themselves every day. And so thank you very much. Have a safe. I hope you have a safe 4th of July. Emily Hay, I hope you enjoyed your first time here. She is from Pershing Technology, Vice President of Systems Engineering Services. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Where can people find you or Pershing or both?
PershingTech.com is our website. We are an independent consultant, and like Tim alluded to, we do government, healthcare, commercial work. So we're a consulting firm that does engineering design services as well as integration services.
Very good. And also with us is Mr. Rich Fregosa, fregosadesign.com, one of the CEDIA tweeps for the upcoming CEDIA trade show in Denver this year. Where can people find you, and where can people register for CEDIA, sir?
Well, the important part first, please support me as one of the returning CEDIA tweeps. You can register. Registration is open for CEDIA Expo 13 now. You can actually go to the webpage. It's expo.cedia.net. And if you register using code CT2, Charlie Tango 2, that's a vote for Uncle Richie. So CT2, vote for Uncle Richie, and help me make sure that I'm sitting at the top of the heap at the end of this whole thing. And Expo was a great show. We're looking forward to having you there. We're hoping to have the CEDIA Tweeps be your social media ambassadors, and hopefully the CEDIA Blog Squad will be back as well once we get some other things moving along. And you can find me on Twitter at rfregosa. You can find my website for all your digital concierge needs at fregosadesign.com. And you can find me elsewhere on the interwebs on Facebook, Google+, LinkedIn, ...
CE Pro and,
CEPro.com.
Yes.
That one too. Got to get a plug-in for my boss.
Yes, absolutely. Tell Ms. Jacobson I said hey. All right, my name is Tim Albright. If you would like to follow me on Twitter, it is TD, Tim David Albright, ALBRIGHT. But more importantly, for me and everybody here at the old AVNation, go to the website, avnation.tv. avnation.tv, you'll find this podcast as well as a host of others. Just put up a brand new DIY talking about home forging. as in making your own, jewelry. So it's actually kind of interesting. But yeah, check that out, AVNation.tv. You can find us on LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook and the Google Pluses and all that. Yeah, but just go by the website if you would, AVNation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. That's all the time we have for AV Week.